Welcome to Nothing Less Than Extraordinary, and an amazing podcast dedicated to ordinary people like you and I that have done extraordinary things in our life. I want this to be a human celebration of the human struggle in this journey called life through its up and down and twist and turn. May their life stories inspire you to reach your greatness and to reach your full potential. It is going to be a lot of fun, lighthearted, and raw in all its form. We will cover topics such as love, depression, divorce, parenting, woman in business, anxiety, addiction, self love, forgiveness, and so many more. I am super thrilled and honored to have you here. My name is Ridon. May you have a great listening. So, welcome back to Nothing Less Than Extraordinary. For those who's just tuning in and it's your first time, welcome with us. I'm super excited to have you here. And honestly, I have an amazing guest today, Velisia Gunawan. So, I am really thrilled to meet her. She's my fellow friend from Vancouver. Woohoo!
Hi,
Welcome to
Ree.
us. It's
Yeah,
so
thanks
nice
for
to have
having
you.
me.
Thank you. Thank you for being on because we have some amazing topic to discuss. And like we like to morph the discussion. So we're going to touch base on a whole bunch of things. So let me first just introduce Velisia. And I love her name too. Honestly, I find it so beautiful and delicate. And she's from Indonesia.
Yeah,
And I can't wait. I get to go to visit Bali, hopefully very soon. Which she's going to Bali very soon. So Valicia is actually a business and strategy coach. She's been in the finance world for over 20 something years. And what makes her really stand out from the other who does like similar work is she's a certified NLP in it. So what does that mean? NLP is neuro linguistic programming, which is super interesting. I looked that up a bit too. And she's also a clinical hypnosis therapist. So that's very neat. I've always been fascinated being in social work to actually incorporate that section in. So I'm so thrilled to have her with me.
that's awesome. Thanks, Ree, for the introduction. You pronounced my name really well.
Oh, thank you so much. And you look so lovely. I love it. Like the makeup and everything. It's awesome. Like so polished. You look gorgeous.
Oh, thanks.
So I want to be able, we got into a conversation that we found very interesting, which I've really been wanting to dying to kind of share with people, especially with everything that's happening in Ukraine. And we talk a lot about refugees and immigrants. And what's really nice about Valicia is she has quite a bit of a life story, how she actually managed to be here in Canada. And she was here by herself, although she was married to a partner then. But it's still leaving behind a whole lot that journey of integration into a new country with a new culture. It was quite an adjustment, and her story is quite something. So, Valencia, if you want to just share a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Yeah. So I came to Vancouver mid 2008. How long ago? That's like almost 13 years, I guess.
13, 2014 years now.
Yeah. Okay. So 14 years. So yeah. Wow. Okay. Um, so it wasn't not easy. I mean, different culture. I didn't have like families here, and I didn't grow up here.
Yeah.
So a lot of, I think, culture shock. It's a little bit underestimate,
Understatement.
understatement. It's a lot more than that. Languages as well are different
Mhm.
because English wasn't really a second language even there. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of adjustment in language, weather, definitely for sure,
Mhm.
um, cultures,
Yeah.
um, pretty much everything else. And when I came here, I could really work right away because I was
Mhm.
waiting for my
Mhm.
permit and stuff.
Yeah.
So that in itself it's challenging because I was always working when I was in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember I cried every day
Yeah.
in the shower for a long time. Tried to get myself back into, let's just say, professional work type of industry
Yeah.
because I had a well established career when I was in Indonesia. So moving here, it's a little bit like, you know, different, so to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started work in retail, actually. Starbucks. I started as a barista. Um, and I worked there for over 3.5 years. It was longer than what I thought I would be. Uh, but when I started, I said to myself, you know what, I want to be shift supervisor within 6 months, and I want to be like I always have that kind of goal, just because I feel like I need to go back to that level of career, or some sort of career. While I was trying to get back into the finance industry at that time, but it was not as easy as maybe a lot of people perceive, or a non-immigrant think, because my education was not in Canada. I had my bachelor in accounting in Indonesia, and I have my master in finance from Australia. But even that, they don't really recognize it. I had my work experience with KPMG, which is one of top 4 public accountants in the world, actually. But that still didn't really do much in terms of, getting an interview or to get into the workplace in Canada. So while I was working at Starbucks, I took some courses so that I can, have some sort of Canadian courses to get into the finance world here in Canada. So yeah, but even that still didn't really do much. But long story short, I don't want to say coincidence, because I don't really believe in coincidence, but at that time I thought it was a coincidence. Because working in Starbucks, I meet a lot of customers, right? So, and regulars. So, you know them by names. They know you. I know their drink just by seeing them. It's like right away, this is what you want. So I got introduced to the world of financial advisor here in Canada. That's what they call it. So yeah, so I started being a financial advisor under Sun Life Financial at that time. So I guess that's how I got back into the finance world, in a way, plus the sales. I mean, I had that sales background too. So yeah, I was a financial advisor for about 6-7 years ish. So I built my so-called my own business, because it's a full commission. It's, you can make as much, you can make as little as you want. That in itself, it's just quite challenging. I mean, I didn't have a market, but I have to build a market. So the first 2 years was really, really tough. But I was able to figure out a system that works for me. And I was able to almost quadruple my income or sales, like at the end of year 2. So that's how I got back into the finance world. And then I end up doing coaching full time about a year ago. But I started doing coaching more kind of on a part-time basis, probably since 2017-ish. So that's the story in a nutshell. And you can ask anything.
So I think more into your story as well. But yeah, that was a good summary of it. I think one thing that we had spoken about that was really interesting is that a lot of people from the developing world have this image, this ideal of what it is to come to either Canada or to the state, thinking life is going to be so much more easier. They'll probably have maids or cleaning staff to take care of their food and do all their laundries and stuff. But it's nothing like that at all. It's like the first couple of years is just like we were saying, it takes about between 3 to 5 years for an ordinary immigrant to really start getting some traction and feeling like they know where they're going. Because the first couple of years, like you said, you spend most of your days crying because there's so much. It's such a foreign place, and you're adapting to everything, the language, the barrier, the food, and especially when you're on your own. In your case, you were married to somebody, but still it wasn't not
It's
necessary.
not the same. Yes, yes, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you leave something behind that you've known almost all your life, so
Yeah.
to speak,
Yeah.
you leave a certain part of you, like you leave certain part of your identity. And
Hmm.
when you move to somewhere that's completely different, like we're not talking moving different cities in the same country, but it's not, then your foundation, so to speak, is a little bit wobbly, and
Yeah.
you're just trying to. There are days that you just on your survival mode because if you imagine your feet is on like standing on something that is not solid yet, so you just try to like, how do I not fall, and how do I keep this balance? um there are those times
Hmm.
on top of like you're trying to find your new identity, and that takes time.
Yes.
That takes time, and there's a lot of other emotions that comes with it because you leave something behind. There's a grief of that, like if
Yeah.
that makes sense, right? You're grieving
Yeah.
something and you kind of don't know, like, who am I, like what am I doing here? You have that question, am I doing this right, am I not, like, and there's an ego, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, maybe like in my case, I came from a place where I have maid, I have drivers, like I have people wash my cars, people serve my coffee, and coming here is doing the opposite, right? So there's that, like
Yeah.
at that moment that wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And you don't want to worry your own family that you leave behind, so you have to show this brave face, uh,
Mm-hmm.
say good stuff.
Yes.
I don't even know if I want to share this this
No,
podcast.
but I find it
No,
so
I know, but it's
beautiful.
just like they'll say like, "Oh, so you were not that great at that time."
Yeah.
But now I can laugh thinking about it because, or remembering it, because where we are right now, it's the collections of our experience and how we learn from it and how we uh, become better, right?
Yeah.
Better
Yeah.
human being.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the identity part, it's big,
Yep.
but if we try to get to see what's the good side of that experience and
Mm-hmm.
try to
Mm-hmm.
learn from it, then it'll be worth it. Maybe not right away at that
Yeah.
at that moment, because it'll be
Good
so
point.
hard to see.
Yeah.
But when you look back, you realize that things that you can do now, or how you feel about things now, that was because the experience that you
Mm-hmm.
experienced in the past.
Yeah.
So, but you're right, it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yes.
It's not like you just come and then, oh, life is just suddenly like in the movie.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
really like that.
They can skip through years and hours.
Yes, yes. But if you work through it, and if
Yeah.
you really the reason why you're doing it, and you're not giving up, and you're open,
Mhm.
then you'll be okay. It'll take
Yeah.
time, but you'll be okay, right?
Yeah, and I
So
think that's a good point what you mentioned. Takes time, and it's so important with regards to identity. We all go through an identity crisis in some form or another. So for a lot of immigrants and refugee, I'm so glad to be talking about it. It's honestly and I get sometimes people making remarks like, back then when they didn't know, and I don't judge, like I'm very open-minded. I often would hear like Caucasian here who's born and raised here going, oh, those immigrant, or refugee, they're like handpicking which country they want to land in here. And it made me so sad because for me to see the struggle that my parents gone through, because we lived 9 years in the refugee camp, and all
mhm,
we wanted to do was to stay in Cambodia. Like we didn't want to leave our country, but because of the war and the genocide in Cambodia, we had
mhm,
no choice but to leave, and our land was no longer a safe place to be. And imagine having to leave behind your country, the
yeah,
people, your culture. So that was really, really hard to do. So I also wanted to mention that while we go through that process, I want people to just have an open mind, especially like, we see a lot on TV now with the war right now. It's to have some kind of sensitivity. And I'm not saying, when you don't know, you don't know. So there's no judgment there. Just to have an open mind of other people's experience. Because when I see my mother and my father working really hard in a refugee camp just to try to get a little money to go by and survival and to keep their kids, I mean, they did a great job protecting us because I didn't get exposed in a whole lot, but I seen enough to know that it was a scary place. And for them, like my mother, since she came here to Canada, it's not because she doesn't want to learn the language, but when you've gone through so much stress, she can't learn anything anymore. Like she can't learn a new language. And at the time, my dad would say, like, how come you can't pick up the language anymore? Because her head, she's so stressed about thinking about her family back in her country. What does she has to do here in order to get by to protect her kid? Will they be safe? And that level of stress is so much on a human being. And you're asking them now to adapt to a new thing.
Yeah.
Like, how come you can't just integrate,
Yeah,
if they would.
Yeah. It occupies the brain a lot. So there's no other room for other stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, people come in and they try to just survive in a way. What I find that that helped me, now that I think about it, is that change is never easy in any situations. Even change job, change relationship, or even change things that as simple as it is. But I think those people that hear this and feel something that is like going through changes, one of the things that is important is, I think the more we resist is the more difficult it is. You might say, oh well, but I don't like being treated like this, for example. You ask me not to resist. It's not necessarily that. I think just to accept what it is now. It's not doesn't mean that, oh, I accept being a refugee, or I accept I have to do something so humiliating to just get money to feed my kids. Not necessarily about that, but it's like accepting, okay, so this is what it is now, just that. Because it's about the energy, right? Like when you say to your mom, because that's so much pressure for her, I would imagine it actually makes her even probably couldn't learn, because it's just like pressure cooker, right? So you gotta be you have to release that a little bit, and then when we relax, we can do
I think your connection is there. You're back. Your connection is back.
Okay. If it's still like that, I might have to turn off the camera. Sometimes it happens like that, but my router is literally beside me. So one of the things that I learned is that we human, we judge, know. Sometimes we can't avoid it, but I learned that when we try to see, we don't know what we don't know. But sometimes when we try to see something instead of making assumptions, I like to look at it from a curiosity perspective. I think that's a big difference. Because if I ask questions, for example, if I already have an assumptions with you or about you, then I will ask questions based on a judgment. Doesn't matter how little it is. Then it's not really a good thing, right? But if I ask questions based on curiosity, then it's different things. And actually I learn more. So when you said earlier about how people perhaps make judgments with all the things that happening now with Ukraine and stuff like that, perhaps take a look at things from curiosity. Why is it this? Why is it that? Instead of why is it this? You see, even it's the same questions, it's just a different, right? Versus, oh, why is that? Why is that? Oh, how come that's possible? Because it's out of the curiosity. It's a big thing. And you actually go, and you actually get more information that
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
But
I think
yeah,
I think it's really good that you mentioned that you're such a bright woman. Like honestly, I connect to you. It almost feels like I'm in your brain next to you. Like, oh, okay, we have similar brain.
that
But I
makes life easier, you know?
it's true, it's true.
Yeah.
But I think approaching it from more of a curiosity, more as an observer, which is something that I tried to do a lot, practicing non-judgmental. It's a hard concept because as human being, to make sense of our world, we must judge in order to compute and see and where each thing kind of belong. And so what I do is that when the first judgment come, I kind of take a step back and look at the judgment and go, oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
what other way of the different interpretation it could be, because there's no one answer. It could be this. And then when I
Yeah.
see it with a variety of different possibility, and then I'm able to pick it better. So, you're not right away assuming. You're like, okay,
Hmm.
this is what I think it is. And you can validate what the person is too. Like, this is my understanding. This is how I perceive it, but I could be wrong. And then you paraphrase and check with the person. It allows you to have a better understanding where they're coming from. Something that you mentioned too, that was really interesting when you were talking about, when we go through so much stress and we have to let off some of the steam. I remember, like, when we first came to Canada, my parents were so prideful. They're very successful in back in their country. They come to this new world, they're nobody. And that is such
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
hard thing to,
That's tough.
that's very tough.
Yep.
And so for them, even just one of my dad's colleague at Christmas time bringing present for us kid, he was so prideful, like I should be able to do this for my
Yeah.
children.
Of
And
course.
and although the person wanted to do a really nice gesture, that was awesome, but it was still very hard to accept. And my parents always told me, no matter what, we would never go on welfare. We would bust our ass off. We would never go on welfare because I'm not doing that. And the rules to us is there's no stealing. It doesn't matter how starving, how whatever impoverished we are, we just don't steal. And I like that. I like those values. And I remember being like those immigrant children. We were in a school full of immigrants, and the white kid would all have money for their lunches, and we'd be like taking lining up to get coupons
Yeah.
for discount meal. was
Yeah.
it was quite something. I remember being so embarrassed to being taking those lines because I just wanted to be like the other
Of
kid.
course. Of course. Of course. It's we call it that attachment, right? Even like
Mhm.
your parents, it's just an attachment of
Yeah.
the life that they had.
Yeah.
And one of the toughest things that human needs to do is letting go,
Yeah.
whether that's a person, an attachment, or things that we used to. Absolutely, it's not easy, and
Yeah.
I can totally relate to that. But even that, it'll have to come to a point that to
Yeah.
have a balance of this is how the new life that I choose,
Mhm.
not that anymore, but how can I make the best out of this? Because
Yeah.
otherwise, if we still attach to the old, it's tough, right?
That's it. Because it aligns well with you had mentioned before about letting go, practicing letting go. And that could be applicable in business, in your personal life, in anything that you do. And I always say the secret of life of being happy is learning to either accept or practice detachment. These are my secret. It's actually part of my secret program of a program that I developed a while back as well called The Warrior. This is after I've gone through losing my sister to getting a
Mm-hmm.
divorce. I felt like, actually, I don't even like using the word warrior because I was like, I don't know if I'm a warrior. I just know I made it out alive. But I have a huge admiration for veterans. And my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather and used to be a soldier, so it felt appropriate at the time. But all that just to say, I think when you've learned to detach yourself from something, and I think in your culture, just as well, in my Cambodian culture, is that a lot of Buddhists, we practice detachment. It's not to attach an association to a house, to a car, to a title. And once you've learned to master it, I think I haven't achieved it fully, but I think I've done a good 50% of the process of it, where, a certain promotion that I want at my job, I'll work towards it. I'll give it my all, but it's nothing more than just the job and the description of it. I don't have like an attachment, like my identity become defined by the title of
Mhm.
this particular job, or the house that I own gives me a certain status.
That's
And
right.
you work hard for it for sure. Like, you should be proud, you should be celebrating that. I'm not saying
Yeah,
not to do that, but it's where the pains come from is the link of that association of who we are. Who we are is so much more than all of those stuff.
of course.
That's it. So once we learn to accept things, people always see acceptance as like, oh, that's like either the coward way of like saying, I'm giving up, I'm throwing in the towel, or you're like, I don't know, I can't handle this, I don't know how to do this. So you accept it. It's almost like a weakness. But in fact, it takes so much courage to accept things. And one thing for me, learning for acceptance, I feel like I'm blabbling on here, Velissa, but
No, no,
bear with me. This is an
no,
important
all
point.
good. Yeah.
You're so sweet. I think learning to detach and going with the flow, what has served me the most is with regards to, without going into the situation, I'm like, I don't like to talk bad about my ex or anything like that. It is what it is, and life has brought us to where we are. And I'm very grateful, and I say thank you to him. I wish it could be different, but it isn't, and it is what it is. But detachment for me is, whenever I ask for something, like let's say I'll enroll the kids, I want to take them on a trip, and it comes back with a negative answer that I don't necessarily understand. So my first reaction from being so used to it in our dynamic in the past is to go, oh, again, Jesus,
Of
And then,
course. Yeah.
okay, 1 second here. Let's just calm down. Let's take some step back and just look at it from like an observer point of view. What good can this actually come out of it? And I just go, you know what? I'm going to embrace I'm going to embrace the whole thing. Take some breather. I needed to take a few moments. I didn't want the kid to feel that energy. So I had to like hide myself a little bit. And then I took some point out where I realized, you know what? In the end, he's doing me such a big favor. I accept that he cannot accept my requests. And let's just go with that flow, and let's make the best out of that. And I just take away all that stress, and it feels so much lighter. And then after that, I'm like, let's look at the positive of this. And there was so much positive that came out of it. So the fact that I wanted to take the kid to go to Brazil, and they were wanting to go on a trip for the longest time, and it's been the hardest 3 years. I figure I built some amazing memory with my children. It would just be me and my kids. And I had a good friend there that we're going to visit. So we're all excited. And the kid was super excited. And then they go back to their dad, and they come back. They're like, I don't want to go anymore. So I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, that's okay. So what's happening here? And then I finally realized, you know what? I accept, for whatever reason, I don't understand. He doesn't feel comfortable with that. I'm not going to push it. Let's look at the positive. The positive is that, you know what? He'll feel more secure that the kids are here. And the kids, I'm teaching them to learn to make their own decision. I taught them, I'm like, look, it may sound like all of this thing, but they're very safe. And it's actually with a friend that's been living there and travel all the time. But it belongs to you, is your decision. If you decide you don't want to come, understand that this will not change mommy's schedule of activity. I am still going to Brazil anyway. And it's unfortunate. I would have loved you guys to be with me, but that won't not be possible. So chance are you will either be babysit by grandma and grandpa, or you have a babysitter. And are you okay with that? And they're like, yes. So all that just to say, it's going to end up costing me so much less. I had put a couple grand for that, a sign going, how do I make this back after? And so I'm like, and now I get to just spend girls' days like for 2 straight weeks of healing. I'm like, woohoo. So in the end, when you learn to accept and make the best out of the situation, like you said,
Yeah,
not always easy at the beginning, but once
absolutely.
you gain something from it, there's so much more that you can actually take out. So sorry, I feel like I'm going on for so long, but I needed to share this when I was like, ah,
No, I think that's a great point. I'm sure, you're not the only one that's struggling in a similar
yeah.
um, sort of kind of situations.
Mhm.
Um, I think one of the thing about acceptance is also that when you accept, for example, in your situations like, oh, I accept that, I couldn't get what I hoped to get.
Yeah.
Just that split moment when we accept, you kind of release a little bit of the tensions in you
Yeah.
that allows you to be able to perhaps see different perspective, and maybe in some situations that parents that experiencing
Hmm.
situations like you, could be a single dad or a single mom, they
Yeah.
might say, oh, you know what, I still want my kids to come with me, but maybe not to Brazil, maybe something closer. But
Yeah.
just to have that acceptance of what happened
Hmm.
will allow them to be able to think about different perspective, instead of like, no, I want this, I don't like that. That's not really good, like for mental health anyways, and usually you don't really um like you don't really get much out of it too,
Well,
unless if it's something that is very, very um like your values, like
yeah.
in the example of your dad, for example, when you said earlier about your dad saying doesn't matter how difficult our situations is, how
Yeah.
poor we are not going to steal. Like
Yeah.
that is values that, you
Hmm.
know, you're not crossing it in any way, shape, and form, right? I think in that situation, if it's about like, as a you and as a mother and your kids and their dad, like
Hmm.
if certain things is about a very solid values, I
Hmm.
think that's something that needs to be quote unquote fight a little bit more. But other than that, the first important key in everything is actually acceptance. Not easy though, but
No, not
you
very
know,
easy.
not easy. But if when you don't, you're just going to
It's just
resist,
gonna
and
make it
that
worse.
is exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exhausting.
And I think that's a good point. And then remember how I said to you, like, we think so much alike, because that was the next thought that came to mind. I was like, oh, but I should tell them, unless it comes to challenge really your value, then you
Yeah,
need to be able to address it and verbalize it. You don't want to
absolutely.
be like a doorman where, whatever path.
Yeah,
Acceptance does
yeah,
not mean that. It just means knowing when to accept and when things are completely out of your control, and to kind of go with that. So I am so happy that you brought that into the forefront, because it's important to also respect yourself, know your boundary. And
yeah,
that's, when it comes to separation or whatever issue, I think friendship, family, workplace, it's very, very important in the
yeah.
business world as well, to learn to be very clear on your boundary. That was a really, really tough thing for me to learn. I mean, that's probably from my personality and from my culture. I always kind of saw a woman as like who says yes to everything.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Some cultures are like that, absolutely, for sure. But yeah, because those things make a big difference on our mindset, right? How we see
Yeah.
things. That's why, in my line of work, um, I'm a business strategy and mindset coach, because we can't really just do strategy without the right mindset. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how great strategy you have in business, in life,
Hmm.
if you don't have the right mindset,
Yep.
honestly, it's you can't really implement that strategy properly
Hmm.
or as great as you think it should be.
Hmm.
Or if you do, it won't go as far.
Exactly.
So you can't have one without the other,
Hmm.
to
Which
be
brings
honest.
us to this as well, because I do want to highlight with regards to your profession and what you do, and I also want you to also be able to give a few strategy to people that might be helpful as well. But definitely, as in the book, the magic of thinking big always says, get your mind right, and then I'm so bad with quote all the time. That's why I don't try to quote anybody. But it's basically what he's saying: think right, then right action, or something along that line. So
Yeah.
get your mindset straight, and then you can accomplish so much more. And the funny
Yeah.
thing is, I've always known that as a little kid. So I don't know, maybe from watching a lot of Asian movie, there's always the hero. He always did the right thing. And the one thing I've learned is like, get this mind straight, strengthen it, and
Yeah.
then you're impenetrable. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing that can actually penetrate it. If it's strong, well, of course, you have to maintain your body to be healthy and strong as
Yeah.
well. But starts here. What you think
Absolutely.
is what you create. So I'm glad you
Absolutely.
mentioned that. I want to be able to highlight the work that you do. So tell us a little bit more about the hypnosis, which I'm super, super fascinated by it, and everything that you want to share. So this is the moment for you and also for people to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah. So first I actually did the neuro-linguistic programming coaching first before I took the hypnotherapies,
Mm-hmm.
because I've always fascinated with, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
amazing, like how the brain works, and how like your brain can do so many things. And I've experienced with my own personal experience how I this is could be a different episode. It's a long story, but it's
Could
how,
be.
yeah, how my, like how I, my mind can communicate with my body when there's an issue, like health issues kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
uh
Give us one
there
example or something.
um a lot of examples in that. So there were a time when I actually had this uh show up a huge lump on my breast,
Mm-hmm.
really big. It just in one night, and it was so like as big as golf balls, if it's not like
Wow.
boiled egg. Yeah, it's painful. For
Yeah.
all you ladies that hear this, you know how it is. If it's men, then probably you don't. But the point is, it was painful and it was so weird. I mean, at that point, I wasn't really worried if something, like cancer or anything like that, because it's a huge lump to
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
cancer. But I was just like, what the hell is happening here? I always believe that your body is communicating with you. It's
Okay.
just that because your body can't talk in a human language, so they're communicating in a way that they know, whether they give you certain pain in your bodies. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not talking about, if you're cutting something and cut you, that means, what do you want to tell me? No, it's not that, but certain things, right?
Yeah.
So, I tried to figure out, and I think I still went to the doctor to book something, but you can't really book right away.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to wait for a few days. And then suddenly I said to, I remember, because this is not my first experience,
Mm-hmm.
but, at that moment, I just couldn't think about it. But then I suddenly remember, you know what, why don't I talk to the lump?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I said to my lump, I said, you don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is not your place. This is my body,
Yeah.
and you don't belong here. If
Mm-hmm.
you have something that you need to tell me,
Mm-hmm.
tell me.
Yeah.
If not, I need you to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm pretty intuitive too. So I get message, sometimes we call it download through my sleep,
Yeah.
or I can feel, and it's just
That's
those
awesome.
stuff.
I'm gonna expand on that because those are
Yeah,
things that are deep.
that's a difference.
I love. I
Yeah,
love.
no, I
We're
think
gonna
that's,
definitely do
and
a
that's
second
another thing
episode
too.
about this.
I think it's important because, I don't want people to tell me, oh, you have this, that means you should do this, and things like
Yeah.
that. Like, nobody knows our own body but us, but we have to be able to understand that, right? So anyways, with that, and I said, if you have something to tell me that you need to tell me, like I'm talking to it literally,
Yeah.
tell me.
Yeah.
If not, you need to go away. You don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this. So, I think even a day after, it's getting smaller, like significantly smaller. It's the lump is so big that it's so painful without even have to touch it. It's,
Yeah.
it's kind of like sore nonstop.
Yeah.
Can you imagine,
Yeah.
like, if you have like a giant pimple in part of your body? That was like, oh, it's
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so the next day is actually getting smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, great, but you're still there. You need to go away.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, it's gone in a few days, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't really, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I said, thank you. And there's other stories in relations with health, but
Right.
that's why I'm always fascinating about brain.
Yeah.
Neuro linguistic programming is about the communications, like linguistic language that we use to talk to others and to us. At
Mm-hmm.
the same time, it's also how our brain process informations. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like one of what you said earlier, how the people judge, how, we might see things according to our so-called perception, because every human's filtered differently,
Yeah.
right? You filtered with your own perception based on your past experience
Mm-hmm.
as a child, or how you were taught being grow up.
Yeah.
Because when we were a child, we don't really have a choice. Like, we don't know, but that's when we were programmed, like our brain was programmed by our
Yeah.
environment, parents,
Yeah.
and our families.
Yeah.
So I always fascinate with that. Um, and then in the NLP that I took, I learned a little bit about hypnosis, and I said, oh, you know what? I want to learn about this more, because
Mm-hmm.
actually I've always fascinated with like psychology,
Mm-hmm.
those stuff like spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never really pursued it
Mm-hmm.
at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I always had that to begin with. It's just kind of like now it's bubbling up, because it's like, this is supposed to be your path kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then I took the clinical hypnotherapy. So hypnotherapy is basically just another therapy technique where we help our clients to get into the subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So that we can make the changes from the subconscious level,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the program is.
Mm-hmm.
So if we try to make a changes from the conscious level, a lot of times the change won't last,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because the program, I'm trying to explain it as easier so people can imagine,
Mm-hmm.
is that if we listen something, that means we listen from the conscious level.
Mm-hmm.
But if your subconscious don't believe that,
Mm-hmm.
then they will reject that change.
Mm-hmm.
So if we say, oh, I want to, just to be easy, common example, let's say I want to have let's say a loving relationship where
Yeah.
we encourage each other positively, it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But let's say we don't grow up that way, so we
Yeah.
don't feel that is something that it's common. So
Mm-hmm.
when we had that relationship, logically we will be like, why would I reject that?
Mm-hmm.
But the subconscious see that as something strange,
Mm-hmm.
something that is like, oh, no, you've never learned about this. So
Mm-hmm.
the job of subconscious is to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to change that kind of mindset, we want to change it from the subconscious level,
Mm-hmm.
so that whatever coming in is kind of connect. So it's like computer program, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're programming something into computers, if they don't connect, they'll
Mm-hmm.
reject. There'll be an error
Yeah.
message, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I find that a lot of those two techniques or tools inside those NLP and hypnotherapies, it helps it helps me to help my client a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they're going through their challenges in business, which is part of their life,
Yeah.
as much as you want to say business or business, personal or personal, ideally, it doesn't always happen that way. A lot of times when something not doing well in their business, something in life may
Mm-hmm.
not doing well as well.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure, like, sometimes people want to, let's say in sales,
Mm-hmm.
when you try to approach people and to do sales, how can we approach so that if there's any rejections, it doesn't trigger us, for
Mm-hmm.
example. Or if you want to build a business, we're human. We will have self-doubt, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
struggling with self-confidence, and questioning and wondering, being rejected.
Mm-hmm.
Those are human emotions. How you can deal with that so that you still can be successful,
Yeah.
whether that's
Yeah.
being as a parent or business owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Go
yeah
ahead.
yeah so when I work with my clients, I don't just do the strategy in terms of this is
Mm-hmm.
your to-do list, what you need to do in terms of business strategy or life strategy. But if they're having an issue or blockages or baggages, so to speak, or traumas, I help them overcome that so that they can do the other things from a better place, from a better space, if that makes sense, which will give you a better result. I truly
Sure,
believe
it
that.
makes a lot of sense. And when you say approaching it from a different space, and it's almost like a change in perspective, it's the problem no longer, you see it in a different angle. The problem is still the same. It's just where you're coming, at what angle you're coming at.
So it may not be a problem anymore, or it's actually the problem will look smaller than you think it is.
Yeah.
Now, if you see it that way, what will that do for you? I think that's just gonna give some like better things instead of, when you see, oh, you know what, actually it's not that big. I could actually do this way instead.
Exactly.
It's solving the problem in a way, or if you see like, oh, you know what, the problem is actually not that big. Okay, then you feel good. Then when you feel good, then you can do things better. You can think better, right? Just a change of vibration. It's huge, it's big, as simple as that. But the results are way different. So
and it's funny you say that. I have so many things in my head. There's always so many things in this head. But what you say resonates so much. I'm like, which one do I pick up first before they all fly out of my brain? Because, I have really bad memory, the bad brain memory after mommy's memory. But the first thing that you said with regards to neurolinguistic is I truly believe there is something about that, because, even when you do meditation, the reason why people do meditation and somebody says, and they're guiding you through stuff and you feel like you're soothed. And then when they tell you like all of your bad energy is just flowing through your body and see it completely dissipate and going into the ground. How is it that just saying these things makes you feel so much better? Because linguistically to your body, it speaks it. So what you're saying is totally valid. It's so much more powerful. Like, I don't know about it, but I'm super excited to get to know more about it. I've always known the brain does a lot of stuff. Like, I didn't have to go to school. I just knew it as a kid. And then just like with your example with the lump, like, to say these things, it may sound like ridiculous. What, I'm going to say something to somebody so I can just randomly fix myself. No, that's not what we're saying. It's just to be careful in terms of how the languages you speak to yourself, because it actually get imprinted into your cell and your body.
Absolutely.
That's it. So
if you think about it, like, it may sound weird, like you're talking to your own body and your body will listen to you. So my questions to that statement is that, so if you go to a doctor or whoever you go, and they tell you something, you believe them. What difference does it make?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. So I'm not saying, don't believe them, but, if you feel weird talking to your own body, to listen to your own voice, like for your body to listen to your own voice, at the same time, you're listening to other stuff outside of you, and who would you trust more, yourself or others? I choose to trust myself more in a way.
And I think intuitively as well, it is so important. People don't know how to listen to their body because the body gives a signal.
Absolutely. And I had so much experience on that. That's why it's not just one experience. That's why I know, like, I like I said, it's a different story. It's just like I had so much experience and proven that that your body does listen to you. That's the good and the bad.
Yes, exactly. The good and the bad. So try to program as much good as you can. So that's here.
But it's not as easy to just suddenly change, right? Sure. Like, we have a habit to say things, and like people sometimes, stop being negative, just think positive. It's not that easy to say that, especially when you perhaps have had so much negative experience. But it doesn't mean it cannot. It's just a matter of like retraining it. So it takes time. But there are tools for that, but it's possible.
And habits are hard to break, and especially when you've been programmed and been saying so many negative things to yourself. But there is one thing that I know in life for sure, the secret of life, there's so many secrets of life, is that you can erase what's in your head as a clear blank slate and start a new identity completely if you just allow yourself to be. I don't know how to explain that. I mean, it's a hard thing. We tend to hold on to our past, hold on to a certain identity, define ourselves a certain way.
Yeah, something that's familiar for
That's
sure.
it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you allow, it's almost like the only thing that I can come to make it explain where people may understand a little bit. And trust me, I have like a very unique brain of thinking, so you might not understand me. It's a completely different world. But the way I see it is like a teacup, you know, when you want to learn new knowledge, it cannot be full. So to create a new identity, you must get rid of the old identity and refill the cup.
You need to create space. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Fill it with a new one. And that new identity that you feed it, you can choose like this if you want to replace it. And it's hard to do because I don't know how to explain it. There is a lot of process to go through. I guess there's so many things in my life that I've done quite a bit of development that I can switch my brain like this and go, you know, today I choose to be like this. Nobody gets to say, but that is
it's a process. It's a practice that you're probably doing it for a long time, and you know it's not a straight line. It'll be like this, absolutely, because in reality we can't just erase our brain and then give a new identity, because we will freaking out. Absolutely freaking out.
Yeah,
because even if we change from one job to the other, we had this
tweaking,
an easy feeling, even if the job that you get now is better than the old. There's that, right? Because that's part of your identity. So can you imagine if you erase all identity? It sounds nice because let's say, oh, my new identity is better, but again, your subconscious is kind of like, whoa, who are all of this? You'll be freaking out, you know. So I think it's just a slight process. And sometimes one of the things I learned when you mentioned about breaking old habits, it's not easy, because when we say breaking old habits, it's meaning like we have to let go of something. Human has a tendency to want to lose something, right? We don't want to lose our money. We don't want to lose our wallet. We don't want to lose our phone. However, though, if we see it in a way that let's learn new habit, then it's kind of like, oh, okay, I want to have more. I want to have more. Yes. Now, when we learn new habit, automatically, in some ways, you don't really do the old habit. So you're removing the old habit without saying, I'm going to remove that old habit. And this is usually most common in people that, for example, try to lose weight, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to snack chips at night. Like if that's what you used to do, and suddenly somebody says that to you, or you like, oh, I don't want to eat chips anymore. Oh, you'll be like freaking out, and a lot of times you eat even more. But if you start to like, okay, you know what? Maybe only on the weekend, but at night I can still snack. Maybe my favorite fruit, for example, just starts, and then throughout times you realize like, oh, actually I don't look for my chips anymore. You know, like there's a slight difference to that.
It's so good that you brought this up, really, Velisia, because I didn't know that that's what I was doing, or didn't make the connection until you made the connection today. So good, so interesting. I'm definitely going to have you on a second interview for sure. But what you were saying with regards to that, oh God, the memory just went out and coming back
about breaking habit.
Yes, breaking habits. So it's the fact that when you're doing this, it is so hard for you because it's been there for so long. Oh God, I've lost the thought. It was so important too. It's such a good one.
Sorry. Yeah, because it's just like a muscle. You're training a new muscle.
Yeah,
you're gonna be sore.
Yeah,
you're gonna resist. You're gonna like, I don't want to, do this sit up, so to speak. But until the muscle is the new muscles get trained, they'll be like, okay, I like
I
it.
think,
I
oh
like the
yes, it
result.
finally
Yeah.
come back to me. It's the programming of something positive. It's so good what you said. Human being hate to lose stuff. They
Yes.
hold on to it. It's like
Absolutely. That's that attachment, right?
so it's like, I don't want to let go. But then if you phrase it in a positive way where you're adding asset to it, like, when you're saying, how about I learn something? How about I just open? How about I
Yeah. You'll
explore?
be so excited. Like even just
Yeah,
hearing that, you'll be like, of course I want to learn
for
more. So
sure.
even with that, like you coming from a better space, right? Then you're more open to learn things versus like, no, I don't want to learn that because then that was gonna,
Yeah.
take this away. No, I don't want to learn that. So
Yeah.
what did that good for you? Nothing, because you're not becoming better, so to speak. You don't learn something new, and you still with
Your old self.
things that you want to get rid of, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? So like even that reframe, it thinks that uh part of NLP,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. It's so amazing on how it
Mm.
changed your life.
Yeah.
That's how I teach my clients, right?
Yeah,
And
it's very, very interesting. And we're definitely going to
yeah,
dive into that much, much more later. But I think if we could leave people with that idea that, put it into a positive spin. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like when you're learning new stuff to try to change a habit, just say, let me just explore, let me just try, and that really gets you excited, and it gets you like there's a non-judgmental, you're like not
yeah,
defensive, you're not like,
yeah.
I'm not doing this, you're gonna self-sabotage for sure. So if I can say, just open your mind. This is the practice I do is, that's why I'm fascinated by hypnosis, is like, wow, that sounds so interesting. Instead of saying, what, that sounds crazy, I'm like, no, what is this stuff?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think when you have that excitement, and you're in the vibration of positivity, so it makes it so much more easy to maneuver and
yeah.
navigate. And so our session is drawing to a close, but I do want to say I am so honored and so happy to really be connecting with you, Velisia. Honestly, we'll have you on or other whenever you're available for another one to really dive down deep. But for just today, I am so grateful for the universe for just putting you on my path to be able to talk about, immigrant experience, refugee, because it's something that is really, that's not heavy on my heart, but it's something that I always wanted to have people better understand. So you did a great job, and your story is too. And I do want to leave this last word to you. Like, what is the one rule or one quote that you have used in your past life or in the present that's served you well to keep on pushing and to continue doing the amazing job that you do in your business?
Oh my God, I love quotes. I
You
think
do? Me too.
I love quotes. Like I have my own folders of like quotes because
Yeah, where to
some
read
days
them
you
though?
need a certain quotes and some other
Yeah.
days you need different quotes, right? Just kind of reminder. But
Hmm.
one of the quotes that I've always like pulled towards too, it's the serenity quote when it says God grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change,
Hmm.
courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. You
Yeah.
know, if I rehearsing it again, if I rereading it again, I've
Hmm.
always get a different,
Hmm.
good, like different emotions. Yeah, it's right. Like we need to have a serenity to accept.
Hmm.
Like we've been talking about today, it's not easy. You
It's
know,
so perfect. Yeah.
yeah, and then we do need a courage to be able to change the thing that we can instead of being a victim. But that requires a courage,
Yeah.
not just talking but doing it.
The
And we
action.
have to have a wisdom to know the difference, because if we don't, then we just keep resisting and we're just in the same. But that requires a wisdom to know what can I change, what can I not,
Hmm.
and
Oh
accept
my
that.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's the quotes that I, even since I was little, like,
Oh yeah.
I had that. Yeah, and I
Oh.
don't know, it just feels like I love that, like I love the energy of that quote. So
Mhm.
I would say that's one of my most favorite quotes.
I think that's amazing. It's a great quote to really summarize well what we discussed. It couldn't be a much more fitting quote, exactly,
Yeah,
with all
yeah.
the different topics we cover.
Yeah. So I just want to also say thank you for inviting me. It
A
was
pleasure.
no, it's a blessing, and I'm grateful as well. I met Reed not directly; it was through
A good
Reed,
friend of mine.
a
Yeah.
good friend of Reed's that I connected with, and I haven't even had the interview with her yet for her podcast, and we end up doing it first. So, like I said earlier, there is no coincidence, and I hope what I shared, because it's so much to share. I hope what I shared in the last like 60 minutes or so, it's something that can be,
I think it's a good,
beneficial. And I see your little
my
poodle
little
there.
dog. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cute.
He's little there, but he's actually quite big. But he is the
It's
kind of dog ever.
staring at
He's royal
staring at the window.
poodle. He's looking at my boyfriend leaving. He's like, won't move. He's like fixated. Where are you going? So thank you so very much, Melissa, Valencia. Honestly, I'm definitely having you back. I thank you. When I talk to you, there's so much in common that it always astonished me and surprises me. I'm like, what? She loves quote and she loves these type of movie and she thinks like this. I almost feel like you complete the rest of my sentence and my thoughts, things I'm like, I should say that. And then you come up and you just like, yes, thank God. So thank you for that. And I wish
Likewise,
an
yeah.
amazing day. And when you're going to go to Bali, think of us because we'll eventually come.
Oh yeah, yeah. You should. But yeah, I'll be away for a few weeks, but I'll be back in June. So I'm
Enjoy.
sure we'll connect throughout time. So
Absolutely. So I'm going to say, have a great day to everybody. So, fantastic. So, Melissa, we'll stay and connect a little bit, but I want to say bye to all of my audience. Thank you for supporting us and thank you for being there and sending all the love. It really means a lot to me. And like I said, even if there's just one viewer and one person that makes a difference, it's worth it all. And to honor Melissa's life story, thank you for being on. Oh, let me just, it's actually, I have to stop the recording.